there has to be a responsibility to print the truth.
President Trump putting NATO on notice and laying down the law on defense spending.
We're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting everybody. It's very unfair to our country, it's very unfair to our taxpayers.
Judge Brett Kavanaugh was on Capitol Hill meeting with some top Republican senators who will try to guide him through.
We feel very encouraged at the early response, not just here at the United States Capitol, but really all across the country.
The Trump administration readying new tariffs on another $200 billion in Chinese imports, ranging from burglar alarms to mackerel.
This just breaking. The corrupt FBI lawyer, Lisa Page, now will in fact not be testifying.
Well, I think their lawyers are saying to them, you cannot go under oath or you're going to reveal information that will put you in jail.
This Florida man running for his life, chased by his 72-year-old tractor driving neighbor. He did get away. The 72-year-old arrested.
All right, we start with the Fox News alert. We are just moments away from President Trump's arrival officially at the NATO summit, where other world leaders are starting to gather.
But the president has already come out swinging, pressing our allies on defense spending.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, that man right there, Kevin Corke, is traveling with the president. He joins us live from Brussels with more. Kevin, the president has been blunt so far.
Yeah, blunt is a way of putting it. Incredibly so, quite frankly. It was riveting to watch him talk about not just what's been happening with NATO spending, but also talk in particular about Germany and how much, or in this case, how little they have been giving to defense spending. Now, it's obviously the president's mindset here is to level the playing field, guys, for the American taxpayer when it comes to funding security interests in the European region. That was his overarching message this morning as he met with some leaders from NATO. Yes, he talked at great length about what NATO partners have been able to spend and what they should be spending. By the way, he also made a very important point. He said, listen, the U.S., when it comes to Germany, for example, is helping to protect them from Russia, while the Germans are enriching the Kremlin to the tune of billions of dollars.
We're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting all of these countries. And then numerous of the countries go out and make a pipeline deal with Russia where they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia. And I think that's very inappropriate. So you tell me, is that appropriate? I mean, I've been complaining about this from the time I got in. It should have never been allowed to have happened. I have to bring it up because I think it's very unfair to our country. It's very unfair to our taxpayer. And I think that these countries have to step it up, not over a 10-year period. They have to step it up immediately.
That searing display by the president comes as the leaders of the alliance are looking for ways to strengthen the overall unit while obviously managing the financial expectations of the U.S. commander-in-chief. I should point this out very quickly, guys. I had a moment to spend with the defense minister of Germany not too long ago, and she said Germany is actually increasing by great amounts the amount that they are investing in their own security and defense. They think the NATO alliance is certainly a key to maintaining peace and stability here in the region, something that will certainly get a great deal of conversation here today, guys. But for now, back to you.
All right, Kevin Corke, live in Brussels.
So maybe it is working. If Germany's increasing their defense spending, we're paying 72% of the defense spending. The president is saying right out of the gate. I mean, that was a breakfast. He lands his plane, he goes to this breakfast, and he looks at the Secretary General in the face. And he said, we're supposed to protect Germany, but they're getting energy from Russia. Explain that. It can't be explained. You know that. It's a pipeline deal that was billions of dollars.
Yeah, $10 billion.
Yeah, and we're protecting Germany from Russia, yet they're buying energy from Russia.
And yet we are overrun with natural gas, and we're very close to the technology to be their number one supplier, and we'll be more dependable, and we'll come out with better rates. They are setting up the hub in Germany. So if the Russian gas is going to go through to Europe, it's going to go through Germany, and they are choosing to do it. Now, listen, the president sat down and was supposed to be, hey, nice to see you. Don't you love the veal? The eggs are fantastic. How do you people in Brussels do it? Instead, it ended up a real exchange. Listen to this.
Over the last year, about $40 billion more has been given by other countries to help NATO, but that's not nearly enough. The United States is paying far too much, and other countries are not paying enough. Hopefully we can get a result. This has been going on for decades, and it's disproportionate and not fair to the taxpayers of the United States, and we're going to make it fair.
And that's what it's all about, making it fair. What's interesting is, the president has referred to NATO as obsolete. You're delinquent, and then he's called all the countries that are not paying their fair share freeloaders, essentially. So the big question is, what does the president want? Does he want the countries to kick in more cash and bring them up to the threshold, or does he want out?
Oh, no, he better not want out. It would be a disaster. It's the most successful alliance in modern times. If he wants out, I think he'll have to push back the entire American people. I also think it's point out that his points are good and they're strong, and he's making it clear. So far, there has been improvement. Our allies have bulked up and put $266 billion more in their defense, and they plan on, we're getting closer to that threshold in 2024. That's because of this president.
Look, the president and NATO don't see eye to eye when it comes to the Iran nuclear deal. We don't agree on that. The president doesn't agree with them on climate change, and then there's the trade war as well. So it's going to be a really interesting couple of days. Meanwhile, as you know, the president of the United States announced that Brett Kavanaugh is his pick for the Supreme Court, and it sounds like Mitch McConnell would like a vote on the nominee in the fall, and then have Kavanaugh on the court when it opens on October 1st. But the problem is, you got Chuck Schumer wants to delay past Election Day because he doesn't want all of those red state Democrats to take a very difficult vote on the man second from the left in the blue tie before the election.
You can see these pictures, video from yesterday. President gets on the plane and he goes overseas to deal with NATO. The vice president is in charge of taking Kavanaugh to the Hill, introducing him to the Republican leaders. He was with Mitch McConnell, you saw there. He also sat down with Chuck Grassley for 30 minutes yesterday. So you have these Republicans that are meeting with him that support him, and then you have the Democrats. You have those that are ratcheting up their rhetoric. You had Senator Richard Blumenthal, the Democrat from Connecticut. He said he is the worst nightmare. He said because of his pro-gun record, and he had a message for the folks down in Florida after that school shooting.
The vice president talked to Brett yesterday. He also said this about Kavanaugh. Believe it or not, he supports him.
I think we feel very encouraged at the early response, not just here at the United States Capitol, but really all across the country, to Judge Brett Kavanaugh. The president wanted to put someone on the bench who would not legislate from the bench. We've had members of our federal judiciary who literally have been making policy and making law from the bench. The president looked at this judge and all of the candidates for this opening through that prism, and that was the basis of this decision.
Yeah, all those, you look at these Democrats, they're never going to vote for him. The ones that are interesting, the blue state Democrats in red states, and the ones that are interesting are Senator Murkowski and Senator Collins. And so far, if you look at his background and everything that he's written, he's this thing called a conservative judge. Well, he has conservative beliefs, and that is antithetical towards what Democrats want. That's it.
Senator Collins yesterday made encouraging comments about his lower court decisions when it came to the Affordable Care Act, and that in 2006 he said that Roe v. Wade is a binding precedent. So, it would be great to get some Democrats, but at the same time, he doesn't need to lose any Republicans.
Those Democrats that you're talking about in the red states, that's Trump country. They're up for re-election. They're in a bind, but they have said they're not going to announce their decision yet. They're going to vet him and make sure that he would be, a good justice.
Senator Schumer could destroy them. If he wants to hold the line and says no one vote, he could destroy every blue state Democrat.
Well, he wants to be the majority leader, and to accomplish that, he's got to delay the vote until after Election Day, and that ain't going to happen.
Right.
All right.
We have to talk about the billions and billions of dollars that's being paid to the country that we're supposed to be protecting you against. I think it's something that NATO has to look at. I think it's very inappropriate. It doesn't seem to make sense that they pay billions of dollars to Russia, and now we have to defend them against Russia.
And they put the natural gas hub and the oil hub right in Germany. Earlier at the NATO summit, President Trump calling out European countries purchasing energy from Russia, specifically Germany, while benefiting from U.S. protection. Niall Gardner is the director of the Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation, joins us now from London. Does the president have a point? And were you surprised he brought it up over what seems to be breakfast?
I think the president certainly has a very strong point in his remarks about Germany. He directly attacked the Nord Stream 2 pipeline with it, which is a pipeline which will run from Russia to Germany, bypassing US allies in Eastern Europe and the Baltic states. And so the president was absolutely right, actually, to condemn the pipeline. This is a Russian project. The Germans are fully collaborating with us for business purposes. This undermines, actually, the pipeline undermines the security of the NATO alliance. And so the president was 100% right to criticize this pipeline and also to call on the Germans to increase their pitifully low defense spending, actually, which stands at just 1.2% of GDP. Compare that to the United States, 3.5% of GDP on defense. The Germans are not pulling their weight in Europe. The NATO alliance is fundamentally important to the United States and to the transatlantic alliance, but we need to see all members of the NATO alliance pulling their weight, investing more in defense, especially the Germans, the so-called economic power of Europe.
They did get a quick reaction force together, land, air, and sea, that's going to be able to react within 30 days. They did start bulking up cybersecurity, both things what the president wanted done, and they have increased defense spending, even though they to about $150 billion combined, even though they haven't hit all the thresholds. Are they on the right track? Would the president benefit for emphasizing some of the positive, or continue the way he's been doing it so far?
Well, the Germans certainly have announced some limited increases in defense spending, but they're way, way below the level, for example, of Great Britain, which spends 2% of GDP on defense. And so I do think that the president is right to really call out countries like Germany on the defense spending issue. And at the end of the day as well, I mean, the Germans are operating an appeasement policy towards Russia with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And so this tough message from the president directly to the Germans, I think, will be effective. There'll be many US allies in Europe who will fully support, actually, the US position on this. So the president is not isolated in Europe. Far from it. Many US allies will support him.
And now, real quick, Poland and Turkey just said, yeah, we got a problem with Germany as well. Real quick, you said that the alliance is obsolete, so you think it should be expunged?
No, I mean, the NATO alliance is not obsolete. The NATO alliance is fundamentally important to US strategic interests. It's vital to the defense of the free world, but we need to see all NATO members investing more in the NATO alliance, investing more in defense, investing more in the future of the transatlantic alliance. But NATO is far from obsolete. It is a vital alliance for the United States. But we need to see all members working with the United States to strengthen the alliance.
All right, so far a rocky start, but it's a very direct, candid start. A lot of this stuff's usually done behind closed doors. With this president, he lets it all hang out. Now it's very interesting. Now, Gardner, thanks so much.
My pleasure, Ryan. Thank you.
Fox News contributor. Tommy, always great to see you.
Hey, Tommy.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So when the president nominates a Supreme Court justice, he lets us fight it out. He went overseas. So let's talk about that. Brett Kavanaugh gets the nomination, and Democrats, for the most part on the left, say he will to guarantee Jeff Toobin and company, he's going to overturn Roe v. Wade. You also say whoever you nominated, Mr. President, make sure they don't overturn Roe v. Wade. Do you want to expand on that?
Sure. Well, I think that it's important to clarify my statements there because first and foremost, I believe that Judge Kavanaugh is a constitutional conservative, not a religious judicial activist, which is exactly what we want. My problem is with some of my fellow conservatives who have put it out there that we are, quote, coming for Roe v. Wade. That is a mistake because we are putting it out there and implying that we are sending a justice to the bench to carry out religious judicial activism, which is a mistake and is unconstitutional. And if we as conservatives are going to imply that, if that's going to be our messaging, we might as well spit on the Constitution. That is not what we stand for. If we are not going to uphold the Constitution on its merit, who will? That is up to us to do. So that my real problem here, regardless of my views on abortion, pro-life, pro-choice, is the messaging of our Supreme Court justice and how he will handle Roe v. Wade if it comes to that point.
Yeah, I know he's Catholic, so he probably is pro-life. but he has said under oath that Roe v. Wade is the law, and he is a constitutionalist. So moving on to the next topic, we want to talk to you about the Trump administration. We've seen people that work for the president just get berated when they're at restaurants with their families, when they're out and about trying to get in their car, when they're at universities. And it happened again. There are demonstrators that were outside of a school in Syracuse because Ivanka Trump was there, and they were chanting, "Shame." What about the children? What's your reaction? Because the left is staying silent on this. Other than the protesters, you don't see the left. Most of the left leaders aren't saying we shouldn't be doing this.
And that's what I find most problematic. And as you guys know, that I've had my own experiences with this. Mine was actually a physical confrontation. Luckily, it was just water.
To you. That's right.
My real problem is when this goes beyond heckling, harassment, water, intimidation, how much worse is it going to get? And what is it going to take for the leaders in the Democratic Party and on the left to stand up against what's happening and to put the message out that this is unacceptable? Because it's going to get worse. The final stages of Trump derangement syndrome aren't just heckling and harassment. They're going to be physical confrontations. And I truly don't believe that that's what the Democratic Party wants for conservatives, is for us to be attacked. But they need to make that very clear, because until then, there are many of their followers and supporters who do think it's okay to do these things. They think it's their right and they think it's their duty, and that's dangerous.
Well, what do you think the end game is? Is it just to berate somebody, film it, put it on YouTube and make them look bad, or what?
Well, that's part of it. I know, at least in my experience, it was done to be filmed, and it was done to put out on social media because people want to be famous or infamous for attacking conservatives. But beyond that, when we have people like Maxine Waters coming out and urging her followers and her supporters to harass conservatives and Trump supporters, there are those that are listening to her that feel it is their right and their duty, as I said, to harass Trump supporters. They feel validated in that. And we have other Democratic leaders and those on the left that throw out terms like Nazi, racist, white supremacist, willy-nilly. That is dangerous, because they are putting it out there that it is okay to attack conservatives because they must be bad people. That's wrong.
Right. I think it's also important, too, is that almost no one is going to be serving in government for any side if there's going to be continue to worry about your own security. When I saw Michael Flynn being heckled as he left the courtroom yesterday by people knowing that he gave 33 years of his life.
Illegal immigration crackdown in Mexico. The country's new president-elect wants to create his own border police force to keep illegal immigrants out in an effort to stop drugs and guns from entering Mexico, he says. Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador has previously criticized President Trump's stance on immigration, but is he now following President Trump's lead? Here to discuss, the executive director of the Conservative Hispanic Society and host of the Chris Salcido Show, Chris Salcido. Chris, good morning to you.
Morning, Steve.
Okay, so we know that the president-elect had a nice conversation with our president, and they talked about things to do, and now he's talking about a police force, a border force. What do you think's going on down south?
Well, we'd have to believe the last year and a half, actually, this entire career of AMLO, as he's called, was just for show. Now, all of a sudden, he is going to be the president of Mexico, and he's changed his tune, and now he's all about border security after campaigning on the fact that he wanted to continue illegal immigration into the United States. He wasn't going to solve America's problem of Central American refugees / illegal immigrants coming into this country. And by the way, I marveled at Bloomberg's reporting on all of this. They always have to couch it as if everything pertains to Donald Trump. In the wake of Donald Trump's controversial immigration policy, which was, by the way, the controversial policy was enforcing the law. Bloomberg thinks that's controversial now. Then all of a sudden, AMLO wants his own military force. This can work out one of two ways. If AMLO says, I want to coordinate very closely with the United States, we want to have mixed units, American and Mexican units, patrolling not only the southern border to make sure that Central American presence doesn't come up through Mexico and into the United States, but also our southern, their northern border. That's one thing. But if he just wants to put a military force, Steve, on the border, I would be very suspect, because look at what's happened in the past. We have had incident after incident after incident of military incursion from Mexico into the United States. At one point, they drew down on our border patrol. It was a very tense standoff in 2014. Also in 2014, they shot at, from a helicopter, their military shot at our border patrol. Of course, You remember who was in the White House? We had a guy that liked to trash America rather than defend America, so nothing was done.
Well,
but I'm very suspect of this.
With the new president, when he was still running, he said that it's essentially a birthright that people should be able to resettle in the United States. You know, it didn't really talk about immigration status, but now for him to be talking about this, you got to be wondering what's he up to.
Yes, I'm very suspect of this guy because he's a leftist, and I distrust as a conservative, as a liberty-loving Latino. I'm very distrustful of communists and socialists. So if he decides he wants to put a Mexican force on his southern border without any coordination with the United States, I think it's wholly appropriate the United States come up with a military force on our border as well.
I think we have one on our border. Let's see what happens. Chris Salcido joining us today. We thank you very much for joining us from Dallas. Thank you, sir. We're taking you live over to Brussels, where, as you have heard, President of the United States, as you can see, he's arriving right now in his limousine, is kicking off a 7-day, 3-nation European trip. The first stop is NATO, and so far he's come in with a bang. Yeah. He's made it very clear that the way things have run in the past going to change while he's president.
It's 12:53 there. You can see at the top of the screen, and there's the president stepping out of the motorcade. He was set to arrive at 1 o'clock their time, so he's arriving a few minutes early.
Yeah, he's a few minutes early there for arrival. He's got an agenda. He's got a big schedule. And this is going to be sort of the working group meetings that all these nations are going to have. There's 28 and there's 29 nations, including us, in this alliance. 5 are hitting the defense spending threshold. With the NATO representatives, especially the European element of this, keep emphasizing is that we're stronger when we're all together on issues, and now don't get hung up on spending. Remember, we've been with you in the past, especially after 9/11, and that's what he wants to emphasize.
The guy that he's with right now, he's the Secretary General, General Stoltenberg. He used to be the Prime Minister of Norway, and now he's involved with NATO. But he sat down with our president this morning, or their morning time, for a breakfast a few hours before this is happening. And the president, right out of the gate, got off the plane, goes to this breakfast and starts pressing him. He says, why are we protecting our allies from Russia while several NATO countries are buying energy from Russia? Then the Secretary General says, we can disagree, but we are stronger together. Then the president says, how can we be together when you get energy from a country from which you want protection? He said, we're supposed to protect Germany, but they're getting energy from Russia. Explain that. It can't be explained, and you know that.
Yeah, he called the allies delinquent for not spending enough on their own defense. And to his point, you know, it was in March that Germany approved a $10 billion pipeline that would link the country of Russia, which is the gas station for Germany, to the German Republic. And so the president's going, wait, I'm a little confused here. So you want money to protect your country from Russia, but you're in bed with Russia when it comes to gas.
What about what Donald Tusk said earlier? He is head of the European Council leader.
Way, can I point out, that is some crazy building.
It is really nice. By the way, who's ever waxing it deserves a raise. Even the president looked like he was having a substantive conversation on the casual walk-in. But Donald Tusk writes,
the Battle of the Don.
Yeah, he says, America, appreciate your allies. After all, you don't have that many. President tweeted out, we do have a lot of allies, but we cannot be taken advantage of. We're being taken advantage of by the European Union. We've lost $151 billion on trade, and on top of that, we spend 70% for NATO. And frankly, it helps them a lot more than it helps us. We'll see what happens. He came back and said money's important, yet the genuine solidarity is even more important. Speaking of solidarity, I want to dispel the American president's argument, which says that the U.S. alone protects Europe against our enemies, and the threat U.S. is almost alone in this struggle. So I guess they feel as though together they do spend more than other nations. Well, but that's 27 other nations.
Yeah, it's 29 total. And the president has said, why are we paying so much?
That's right.
We're losing so much money. It's hard to do business in Europe because of trade. Like he said in that tweet, we've lost $151 billion. That was just last year on trade. And you want us to pay the majority to defend all of you guys?
So as the president arrives at NATO HQ, this is going to be a meeting like no American president has ever had with the body. So far, he said they're delinquent, obsolete, and freeloaders.
Right.
And that's just the first day.
I just hope it could end positive. The way to get things done is to be direct. What usually happens is they're direct behind closed doors and it leaks out by unnamed sources.
Right.
The unnamed sources don't need to be unnamed because the president puts it on microphone.
But you know what? That's just a negotiation. That's the way this president works. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Freedom of the press, there has to be a responsibility to print the truth.